It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce the curator of the Matef Hashoah, the Chamber of the Holocaust, Aaron Seiden.
Before the Holocaust, my name was Seidenfeld. My father, after he came out of the concentration camps, he shortened the name from Seidenfeld to Seiden. My name today is Seiden.
And Aaron, you mentioned about the Magen David over here.
Yeah, this is my Matef Hashoah was built originally as a symbolic cemetery. We'll shortly see how it was more than just a symbolic cemetery. And in the spirit of a cemetery, when you walk in, you immediately see a Magen David, right, a Jewish star right above the entrance, just as you have in the entrance to many cemeteries. Here you have a memorial for the concentration camp of Bergen-Belsen. 20 years after the liberation of Bergen-Belsen, Bergen-Belsen was liberated in 1945. You'll see here it says they made this memorial in 1965, exactly 20 years after the liberation of Bergen-Belsen. It says on the memorial in 4 languages, English, French, and Yiddish and Hebrew. It said this memorial stone was put here by the organization of Bergen-Belsen survivors who came to Israel. You see it's in the form of a box and a ball on the top. Right after the liberation of Bergen-Belsen by the British Army, the British came there and they found huge mass graves when the Nazis did not have a chance to cover over the mass graves filled with thousands and thousands of dead bodies. One place where they covered up over a mass grave after liberation, the survivors right after the liberation built a memorial pillar in Bergen-Belsen in this form with a box, with a cube and a ball on top. That was right in Bergen-Belsen, right after the liberation. 20 years later, they built a memorial here on this site, exactly in the same shape as the original memorial pillar, which was built in Bergen-Belsen at the liberation. Okay, and you see it says in French, English, French, and Yiddish, and Hebrew, 4 languages, put there by the organization of Bergen-Belsen survivors after 20 years, exactly 20 years after the liberation of Bergen-Belsen.
And here we have just from Holocaust to rebirth.
Okay, what's that? Turn it off for a second.
No. And then we're going over here. This is the entrance to the museum.
Okay. Very important. Very. Okay.
This is from Avadia.
Right.
On the Mount Zion there will be a sanctuary for survivors and will be holy.
When I came here many years ago, it was a handwritten sign, the original sign. We've redone it. Now you see it's in Hebrew and English printed, a nice sign on top of the museum. It says on Mount Zion will be a sanctuary for survivors, Har Zion Yeh Pleta.
And it was established in Chamber of the Holocaust in 1949.
We'll discuss that. Okay. You want to do that? You want to explain this?
This were anti-Semitic documents that were donated by Julian Gessalter. He had an exhibit here on postcards of synagogues pre-Shoah, before the Second World War, before Kristallnacht, and he showed these documents that he had. And then he just decided that there's no better place to showcase these documents here in the Matef Hashoah, in the Chamber of the Holocaust. And this is just a history of hatred.
Okay, no.
And these are.
Reason behind it. Okay. As we go through the rooms, we'll see many hundreds of these gravestones. Each stone is a city or town in Europe where most of the Jewish people were killed in that town during Holocaust. After Holocaust, survivors of Holocaust who came as refugees to Israel put up gravestones for all the millions of people killed in the Holocaust who have no gravestone. Now, even though the towns are in Europe, most of names of towns, they only wrote in Hebrew letters. But if you look carefully, you will see a few scattered ones in the original Latin characters, like here, for example, or here, for example, or here, for example, or here, for example, cities or towns in Europe. Okay? Now, there's a very obvious thing that I only understood quite recently. I've been here many years, Bezrat Hashem. And I always pointed out to everybody that almost all the stones are only written in Hebrew. I'd say more than 90% approximately are written only in Hebrew. A few scattered ones that I showed you are in the original Latin characters. Then I thought to myself, that would appear very strange. These are cities and towns in Europe. Now, and this has become a tourist site. Now, if I was building a tourist site today, where tourists come from all over the world, and I would have memorial stones for towns in Europe, obviously I would put everyone in the original European name in Latin characters, in English characters. So the question is, one has to ask oneself is, why do they put them almost all only in Hebrew? And the answer is as very clear as follows. Why was Matef Hashoah built? Why were the stones put up? After the Holocaust, thousands of Holocaust survivors come to Israel as refugees. There was a very practical problem. Where are these people going to come cry and mourn? There was no cemetery. Their families had gone up in smoke. So originally Matef Hashoah was built like a cemetery. It's a place for Holocaust survivors to come and cry and mourn. Now, if you go to any Israeli cemetery, the gravestones are written only in Hebrew letters. So since they conceived of it originally as a cemetery, as a place as a cemetery for Holocaust survivors to come and cry and mourn, they only wrote them in Hebrew letters. Now, this was right after the Holocaust, in the 1950s. At that time, the Holocaust was not history. It was what they call in Hebrew actuality. It was real life, everyday life. There was a practical need for these people to come and cry and mourn, a cemetery. So they put them in Hebrew. They put the Israelis like an Israeli cemetery. They were not prophets, unfortunately. They did not realize that 70 years from now, 70 years later, will come here tourists from the whole world that would not know how to read the Hebrew letters. They thought of them in their terms as a cemetery. So they put them all only in Hebrew letters like an Israeli cemetery. Okay. Now let's look at one. Most of them do not have the number of people killed. A few scattered ones. We'll have, for example, there's one over here. They can see this. Where is it here? One right on this wall here has the number. Remember, it's right around here. Okay, 1 second. I'm playing this at a time. Here it is. No, that's the date. That's it. And then we'll come to the number. Here's the number. Here we have the numbers in Hebrew letters. Okay, that's the date. Okay. Here,
Lublin.
Very famous Jewish community for hundreds and hundreds of years in Poland. I don't know if the people seeing this film can read Hebrew, but here it's very special. It has the number. Here it says 50,000 Kedoshim, 50,000 people just from this one town of Lublin who were killed in the Holocaust. Who put this stone up? It says in Hebrew, the organization of survivors from Lublin who are living in Israel. So the survivors from Lublin put up the stone for 50,000 people from this town of Lublin. I'm pointing this out because even though it is written only in Hebrew, it does have the number of people killed in this town written right on the stone. Okay, now, let's go over here. Here, as I mentioned, this was originally built like a cemetery. Now, in the spirit of a cemetery, they brought Torah scrolls burnt and Torah scrolls desecrated by the Nazis for what is known as gniza, for burial. In the Jewish religion, the Torah being the word of the one God, if something happens to it, it's not chas v'lilah thrown in the garbage can. A Torah scroll is buried if something happens to it. So as we go through the rooms here, all the Torah scrolls that we will see that were either desecrated or burnt by the Nazis were brought here for what is known as gniza. Here we see very clearly the grave and Torah scroll. Here, this Torah scroll, you see the burn holes where this Torah scroll was burnt in the Holocaust. See the holes here where it was burnt? Very clearly, okay? And according to the information we have, the Nazis went into a synagogue on Simchat Torah night in Warsaw. They forced the Jews to take a Sefer Torah out of the synagogue in Warsaw on Simchat Torah night, and the Sefer Torah were burned outside of the synagogue in Warsaw on Simchat Torah night. After the Holocaust, the Sefer Torah that were burnt at Simchat Torah night in Warsaw were brought here for eternal gniza, eternal burial here on Mount Zion.
And we have here as well. Here's also with the tefillin.
Okay. Yeah. Last item. If we discuss every item here, it'll take us about 10 hours. So we have to just focus, and we have to focus on right now. Okay. I can tell you a whole long story about one of the items in there, but we'll just continue like 10 hours. Okay. So let's focus on what we can possibly focus. As I mentioned, it's interesting. It's an interesting point also. Matef Hashoah was said originally built like a cemetery by the survivors from scratch. Now I just mentioned in passing to Les, I mentioned him that, well, I could speak 10 hours about this place. Well, the truth is, I'm here many, many years, and I'm still discovering things here. I'm still learning more about this place every day, almost every week. So there's very tremendous depth here. Since it was not built as a museum, I'm finding things, understanding things, learning about items here as the years pass, one after the other. Okay. Now, here it says in Yiddish, in the Hashoah von Kiddush Hashem, in the town of Tornograd in Galicia, they went into the synagogue in the middle of the prayers. Here, the moment they took them out of the synagogue, in the moment they were still in the middle of the prayers, they're still wearing their talit, their prayer shawl, and their tefillin, and they killed them in a mass grave next to the synagogue in the town of Tornograd in Galicia. It says in Hebrew, it says this, and the moment they said of Kiddush Hashem, the moment they said their Shema Yisrael, before they killed them in a mass grave next to the synagogue. This took place in the town of Tornograd in Galicia. Here is the stone for the town of Tornograd, put there by survivors from this town.
It makes it so real. And here's for the memorial.
Okay, every room we have these metal, how would I describe it, plates. Well, the purpose of these plates is for people to light candles in memory of the people who passed, the people killed in the Holocaust. What we'll do is, I'm not an artist, I'm more of a historian. There are many beautiful pieces of art in Matef Hashoah. Art is not my field. I think we're going to focus right now on the historical items. Okay. This wall is important because this wall, it just so happens to be that many of the stones here, they happen to have written in the original Latin character. So it's worthwhile showing the viewers here, this town in Yugoslavia, these towns in Czechoslovakia. See this? Here, this is a town in Hungary. Okay, so they can see many here are written in Latin characters, but as I mentioned, in the style of a cemetery, the big majority of the stones here are only in Hebrew. Okay. Here you have someone holding a Sefer Torah with a yellow star on his back in one of the ghettos. Very shocking photo. The Nazis here are torturing Jews wearing tefillin, forcing them to stand in this position. When I found this in a very old Sefer Yizkor that I found in the archives of our museum. I put this up already years ago, and when I put it up, it was a very rare photo. Now, a very famous Jewish singer, he made a video about Yerushalayim, and this appeared, he came here and he put it in his video of Yerushalayim. There were thousands of copies of that video, so now it was a rare photo when I came here that I found in a Sefer Yizkor, and now it's no longer rare. What's important, it's a very shocking, very important photo, torturing Jews wearing tefillin. Go upstairs. Okay, should I mention that? Should I discuss this point?
Yes, sure.
Okay. I think you can photograph this and explain to you. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Here, there's a quote, the Nazis made different items from the parchment of Torah scrolls. They made these soles of shoes from the parchment of Torah scrolls. They made these bags from parchment of Torah scrolls, these wallets from the parchment of Torah scrolls, and this drum from the parchment of Torah scrolls.
This is a wallet, and this is a lampshade.
No, I'm going to come back. I have to put a sign on the front that'll be back in a moment. Put it on tomorrow. I'll be back.
Original prisoner garb worn by Jews in concentration camps.
Okay. Focusing on items that are very unique here. Okay. When I came here many years ago, there was an old sign that said on the sign that this Torah scroll here was a Torah scroll with blood from Jerba off the coast of Tunisia in North Africa. Since that time, I've spoken to Jews whose families came from that town of Jerba, and what happened was the Nazis went into the ancient Jewish community of Jerba in North Africa and Tunisia, and they demanded a big sum of gold from the rabbi of the town and the Jewish community in the town, in return for not killing the Jews of Tunisia. That's really all I know. And right at that point, they were gathering the gold together, and the Jewish people and the Nazis at that time had suffered defeat, and the Nazis began to retreat. As I said, but this Torah scroll, the information we have is limited. All we really know is the original sign that said that when I came here years ago said it was a blood-stained Torah scroll from Jerba off the coast of Tunisia.
But you can see the Sephardi Torah scrolls. And Aaron, these are lampshades made from a Torah scroll.
So I watch your head. Here, like almost everything here this place was built and put together by survivors. Here's a memorial wall to the Warsaw Ghetto. It says Lezecher Halochamim Hagiborim Hakadoshim Ghetto Varsha, in memory of the holy fighters of the Warsaw Ghetto. And like everything else here, who put this up? It says here Yotzei Varsha Israel. Survivors of Warsaw were living in Israel right after the Holocaust. Put this wall up, memorial wall to the Warsaw Ghetto. Now look at this photo. This is a very important photo. I'll tell you why it's important. Well, as I said, this whole place was built from scratch by survivors. I've been cleaning up the place and reviving the place, Bezat Hashem, and revamping the place for many, many years already. One time, years ago, I was going through a very old crate of books. On the bottom of the books, under the books, I found a small, tiny black and white photo. I enlarged that photo and I put it here. It's very likely, almost very high probability it was brought here by survivors. Very, very high possibility that maybe this is an original photo, I don't know. And I enlarged it. So I have no information about this photo other than what you can see, what I can see. What do you apparently see here? You see German soldiers here, Nazi soldiers. Apparently they're arresting this Jew that they caught. I'm just guessing, hiding out maybe here. Okay. Now, why did I put it in the Warsaw Ghetto room? I put it here because maybe it comes from Warsaw Ghetto. I don't know. I know nothing about it. Okay. I have seen many other pictures of the Warsaw Ghetto after the time of the Warsaw Ghetto. He seems to look like a certain person I saw in certain other photos of Warsaw Ghetto, but I don't know. I just found this in the bottom of a crate here. I washed it, and it is what it is. Okay. Here we have pictures of two of the greatest rabbis in the Warsaw Ghetto who killed in the Holocaust: the Piazetzner Rabbi, the Eish Kodesh, the Divrei the Torah that he wrote in the Warsaw Ghetto. Afterwards, they found it buried in the ruins of the Warsaw Ghetto. They printed it in a book called Eish Kodesh. And here we have Rabbi Menachem Zemba, also killed. He was killed murdered by the Nazis. The rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto, one of the greatest rabbis in the world. Hashem Yikom Damo. You know what we'll do? Something I want to point out, because this is Torah scroll for all the decades was in the front room, in the wall, in the window for Vengrove. So we put it here during our recent renovations. But the front room, maybe you'll see we have a huge memorial stone for the town of Vengrove. So if I put this Torah scroll in that window next to the memorial stone for the town of Vengrove in Poland. And when I came here, was a very old sign, very, very faded sign that said this Torah scroll was a blood-stained Torah scroll. Said on the sign, on the very worn-out old sign, this was a blood-stained Torah scroll from the town of Vengrove in Poland that had the name of the Holocaust survivor. I think his name was Finkelstein, who donated it many years ago here. So this is a blood-stained Torah scroll from the town of Vengrove in Poland.
And Aaron,
now, there was a Jew in the concentration camp of Buchenwald in Germany. He wanted to pray to the Almighty, but he didn't have a prayer book, obviously, in the concentration camp of Buchenwald. So what did he do? From his own handwriting, from his own memory, he wrote a Siddur, a prayer book by his own memory, by heart, in the concentration camp of Buchenwald. But he had a very practical problem. The practical problem was, where is he going to find stationery? Where will he find writing paper in the concentration camp of Buchenwald? Well, this Jew, he was doing slave labor. He was doing slave labor in a aircraft factory outside of Buchenwald. So therefore, he found scrap paper in the aircraft factory where he was doing slave labor, and he wrote the Siddur, the prayer book, on the backs of scrap paper that he found. Okay. You look in the back, you see words in German, and one you can see very clearly here. Look at this one over here. You see it says there, Volk-Wurf. See the word Volk-Wurf?
Yeah.
You can do a search on the internet, you'll find out that Volk-Wurf was a German Nazi aircraft company that made fighter aircrafts for the Nazis during the World War II. So he was doing slave labor in a Volk-Wurf aircraft factory, and he wrote the Siddur, the prayer book, on the backs of the Volk-Wurf, backs of the documents that he found in the Volk-Wurf factory.
These are all handwritten, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all.
And we'll just see at the back. See the stationery.
Let's go here.
So he has candles that have been lit in.
Here, this is the most newly received item that we have on display. Years ago, I received a phone call here from someone representing a Holocaust survivor. The Holocaust survivor wanted to remain anonymous. I got no details about this at all, except for one sentence. The sentence I received was that they were made very tiny tefillin to hide them from the Nazis during the period of the Holocaust. Where they came from, more details, the name of the person who donated. I asked questions, they refused to give me any details. I only spoke to a person who represented him. You see here how the tiny tefillin made very tiny to hide them from the Nazis. And here, this comparison, here's a normal size of tefillin. You see how tiny they are compared to the normal size.
And inside is the...
No parches, right? No parches.
But that was just, this was inside.
I know nothing more than I told you. I see the guy wanted to remain anonymous. Okay. Now let's go over here. Actually.
Okay.
Okay. There was a Jew who managed to smuggle a shofar, a ram's horn, into the concentration camp of Buchenwald. He managed to, the shofar was blown in Buchenwald on Rosh Hashanah, and the Nazis caught the Jew blowing the shofar. After the Holocaust, the shofar that was blown on Buchenwald on Rosh Hashanah was brought here for eternal burial, eternal geniza here on Mount Zion in Matef, Hashoah.
And this is the original shofar.
Let's go over here. Discuss. This is perhaps the most important site. In 1949, year after founding of State of Israel, they brought ashes from the crematorium, ashes from the ovens from Europe. There was a funeral through the streets of Jerusalem, through the streets of Yerushalayim. The ashes, I was told, was buried under this black stone memorial. That's what I was told by Mordechai Goldstein when I came here many years ago, that the ashes were buried under the black stone memorial. Here you have the names of some of the biggest death camps and mass murder sites inscribed on this from the gravestone. Shortly, we will see in the next room, we will see the places from where they actually brought these ashes.
Aaron?
Yes.
So these are all the major, this is Treblinka, Buchenwald.
These are some of the biggest camps. There were thousands of camps, unfortunately. Literally thousands of camps. These are some of the biggest camps. Death camps at the campsite, but there are unfortunately literally thousands of camps. Judah Goldhagen, the famous Holocaust historian of Harvard University, he writes in a book, I have it right here, I'll show you, he writes that in his estimate, there were 10,000 camps or ghettos. That's what he writes.
Bergen-Belsen, Metternich, Theresienstadt, Auschwitz, Dachau.
Let's go to the... Okay. Shazach, who built this place, he calls this the Me'il HaKadosh, the holy jacket. We saw the other items the Nazis made from the parchment of scrolls, parchment of Torah scrolls. Here, the Nazis made a coat, a jacket from the parchment of Torah scrolls. According to information we have, the Shazak writes in one of his books. Shazak is the person who found this site. He writes that there was a Nazi commander, Nazi officer in the concentration camp of Buchenwald. He forced a Jewish tailor to make it from the parchment of Torah scrolls. And he told the Jewish tailor that if you don't do it, the Jewish tailor was the name of Laser, he told him that I will kill you and another 10 Jews in the camp. So, all interpretations of Jewish law, if they're going to tell you, not only will they murder you, they'll murder another 10 people, you have no choice. So the Jewish tailor made it, okay? The Nazi officer then put it on, wore this in public. He gathered together many of the Jews from the camp in a public auditorium, and the Nazi officer wore this in front of the Jews in the camp to make fun of the Torah, okay? It should be noted, and on the very back of the jacket, you'll see the parsha of the Tochah, the curses. Parsha from the Torah discusses the curses, the punishments that will come upon evildoers. I think he writes that the Jewish tailor purposely put that on the back of the jacket. And when the Nazi officer forced the Jewish tailor when the Nazi officer wore this in front of the Jews he gathered together in the auditorium, he forced the Jewish tailor to read some of the verses in front of the people in their auditorium. The Jewish tailor, in an ironic way, making fun of the Nazi, read the verses from the Tochah, read the verses from the curses in front of the Jewish people who were gathered in the auditorium. The ashes were brought in these 30 containers in 30 places in Europe. Now if you come over here, read what it says in Hebrew, Les?
If you could read.
That's my glasses on the front, but it says that they brought the ashes of 200,000 people they brought here, and they brought it from these places in Europe. This is as you see, it's a very worn out, very old document. My theory is it was probably from 1949 when they brought the ashes here. And even a person who's a scholar of Holocaust history might not be aware of all these places. These are very not known places, except for, obviously, you've heard of Mauthausen, the famous, infamous concentration camp in Austria. According to my research so far, we know that there were dozens upon dozens of smaller camps around Mauthausen, around all the other big death camps also had what were known as satellite camps. I forget the German word for that, but there were satellite camps around the bigger camps. So the other places, according to the information I have, are all other smaller camps around Mauthausen.
And these were the containers
that they brought the ashes, which are now, I was told, buried over there. Now here we have soap the Nazis made from the fat of human beings. Okay, some of the soap here was brought originally by Simon Wiesenthal in the early years of Matef Hashoah. Over the course of the decades, we've received other soap from other survivors. In the Nuremberg, without giving a whole lecture on the topic at this point, we could give a lecture some other time, but in the Nuremberg trials of Nazi war criminals after the Holocaust, there were testimonies, they brought evidence in the Nuremberg trials about how the Nazis made soap from human beings in a place in Gdansk, in Danzig, Poland. There was an institute for anatomy there, and the Nazis made quantities of soap there. I have information that perhaps the Nazis might have made soap in other places. I'm researching that. We already have here in our possession a copy of original Nazi document where the Nazis themselves mentioned the soap. I'm hoping, please God, in the relatively near future, please help with Hashem to have this document on display.
And Aaron, this
is very interesting. Everything I said till now is a fact, and now I'm going to tell you something that's only my educated theory. My first years I was here, I would give tours of this site, and I would tell everybody, well, here you have a replica of the crematorium. Replica of the ovens where they burned millions of people. But then a number of years ago, I began to look at this replica, in quotes, a little bit more closely. Let me show you something. There's a young student who came here a number of years ago. He visited Europe, and to this day, in Poland, you still see in the death camp of Majdanek in Poland, you still see Majdanek, right? Majdanek, you still see the crematorium, the ovens are still standing. The Nazis never explained. Now in Majdanek, you see that, I'm a Kohen, not a place for Kohen. There is still a big pile of ashes. There's a pile of ashes there.
It's right next to Lublin
Right.
Madanik.
Now that student brought this brick back from Majdanek. He took it out from one of the crematorium that's still standing.
This is from the original Madanik.
Right. Now, so this definitely came from Majdanek, right? But then I began to look. As I said, now I'm saying something which is an educated theory of mine. Okay. See here, I always thought these were only replicas of a crematorium. But then I began to look at them very more carefully. You'll notice each one has a row of bricks around the oven, which is totally different than the original building structure here. See this?
Yeah.
See this?
That's true.
And I know for a fact that Holocaust survivors built everything here from scratch. Okay? So I began to look at these bricks, and I began to look at this brick, and it doesn't look too different.
You're right.
So my theory, and it's only a theory, is that since I know Holocaust survivors built everything from scratch, my theory is the Holocaust survivors, when they built this site, brought a brick from the crematorium in Europe and put a brick from the bricks around the crematorium on each one of these, what I had thought were only replicas of crematorium.
I think you've got a very good...
You're a dentist, so you can tell these types of things. Different substances, different materials. This is clearly a different material than the building here, you know?
It really is.
Okay? Now, this is
This is
right.
the...
Now this, I want to point this out as significant in that some of the earliest photos of this site, some of the earliest black and white photos of this site, you see Holocaust survivors standing in front of this sign here. So this sign is one of the first things Holocaust survivors came here, they put up in this site when they came here. It says in Hebrew, it says, Ani Mamin, Emunah Shlema, V'ya Mashiach, I believe in the coming Messiah, even though he's still tarrying, he's not yet come, we still believe every day that he will come. One mystery here that I'm still trying to figure out is what does this mean? Shirat HaOrchim, the song of the guests. I mean, I did a search on this on the internet. I couldn't find what did they have in mind. Maybe they mean guests to the site. Maybe anybody sees this film or you want to try to investigate, what did they mean by Shirat HaOrchim or Arachim? No, I'm not Shirat HaOrchim, Shirat HaOrchim, Shirat HaArachim. I don't know exactly. Let's go.
Aaron, how many Matevas do we have roughly?
Well, I'll tell you something. Everything here is on this side is very much by divine providence. Over the course of my many years here, several times we did projects to put them all on computer. And each time we did it, somehow from the heavens, the project never came through. Just for example, the last time we did this project, there was a young student, a woman student. She was coming here every week for volunteering for a long time, writing down the names carefully, all the names of all the stones, putting it in her notebook with the idea of putting them all in her computer, so we would have computerized, and the whole thing we know the exact number. And what happened was, after she did this when she got to a certain stage, she went back to Chutz La'aretz, left Israel. And I emailed her again and again because I wanted her to finish the project, and she just doesn't answer her emails. So that was not the first time we tried this project. So therefore, from the heaven project, we have not put them all on computer, and therefore we do not know the exact number. Any numbers you will see mentioned by anywhere else is estimates; they've never been counted. Okay. Now this area is much of it's Lithuania, which is a great center of Jewish life before the Holocaust. Some of the greatest yeshivas of today have their origins in Lithuania. You see the town of Volozhin, Ponevezh, and for example, Slobodka, some of the greatest yeshivas came from. All right. Here you have the town of Vilna. Vilna, for hundreds upon years, Vilna, for hundreds of years was one of the greatest centers of Jewish life in Jewish history and in Europe. Hundreds of years. It was such a great center of Jewish life that Vilna was called, in short, it was called the Jerusalem of Lithuania. Yerushalayim Delita.
Yerushalayim Delita.
Right. So what did Holocaust survivors do? When they came here to Israel, survivors from Vilna, they wrote here, we'll explain what it is. People know that on Tisha B'Av, on the 9th of Av, in synagogues throughout the world, we read the book of Lamentations, the book of Eicha, which mourns the destruction of Jerusalem 2,500 years ago by the Babylonians. Okay? The destruction of Jerusalem. That's the Jerusalem, land of Israel. Here, survivors from Vilna, they wrote a Megillat Eicha, a book of Eicha, mourning the destruction of Vilna, which was known as the Jerusalem of Lithuania. See the word Eicha on top? Eicha, Ha'ir Vilna, and a picture of the grave of the famous Vilna Gaon. People come in, one second, I'm not watching in front of me. Hi, Shalom. English? English. I apologize. Normally I sit in the front of the museum. No, you stay here. However, I was not there. Did you see the sign in the front when you walked in? There's a sign here that says, admission please, here is 10 shekels. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, because it's not an open for a museum. Since I was not in the front when you walked in, when you walk out, whatever you can. Okay, the box in front. You'll see the sign. I'll be back in a moment. Right behind the sign is a box. Put whatever you can in the box.
Okay.
And so, do you have a hat of any sorts? Do you have a hat?
No.
Okay, let's, okay.
I'll go through you, and then you'll come. No.
Okay. I just want to take a break. Okay, I'll be back. We just recently, last 3 weeks, I volunteered. We painted this sign. This is brand new, and I have a Hebrew on the other side. This is newly repainted. I'll be back. One second.
Thank you.
Here was Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman, one of the greatest Rabbonim, rabbis in pre-war Europe, head of the Yeshivat Ohel Torah in Baranovich. Rabbi Elchanan went to America to get funds for his yeshiva, and people begged him and pleaded that he should stay in America and not come back, because they knew what was going to be happening, and the Rav said he had to be with his Talmidim, he had to come back, and he came back. And in July 1941, Tammuz 5701, he was murdered al Kiddush Hashem in the fort in Slobodka in Kovna. And this is a picture of the Tzaddik of Yerushalayim, Rabbi Ariel Levine, the Tzaddik of Yerushalayim, visiting the Matef Hashoah, the chamber of the Holocaust, in 1965, 5725, for the dedication ceremony of the Children's Memorial Monument. These are the different mitzvahs of the different shtetls and the different towns, and some have pictures of the different shtetls. And this is mainly in Lita, in Lithuania, in Latvia. Yes, here we are.
Okay. We'll go to the outside courtyard now. Let's come to the outside court. Watch this up.
This is Al Malei Rachamim.
Maybe it's without this. Do you photograph this?
Al Malei Rachamim.
Okay. Jewish woman crying. I found this certain book and I enlarged it. Jewish woman crying in the large ghetto with the yellow star on their back. And prayers. Okay, no, it's okay. What this is, there was a Jewish lady in Auschwitz who managed to make a menorah of from potatoes, from potato shells. She made a menorah and lit it on Hanukkah. Obviously, everything here is original, but obviously potato peels cannot last more than 70 years, 75 years. But however, it is original. Was brought here by a lady called Livia Bitten Jackson. She donated this here, and unfortunately, I don't have the original sign because she herself was an Auschwitz survivor. And what I do not recall, unfortunately, if she was an Auschwitz survivor, she donated this here on this model of the menorah made in Auschwitz from potato peels. What I do not recall, unfortunately, is whether when she was in Auschwitz. I recall that she was an Auschwitz survivor. She donated it. I do not recall, unfortunately, if she was the one who herself made it in Auschwitz, or there was another woman who made it in Auschwitz. Due to various renovations, unfortunately, I don't have the original note that describes it.
Okay.
Once again, every stone. The sun is very bright. Oh, I should have brought my baseball hat. The sun is, every stone is a city or town. Every stone is a city or town in Europe where most of the Jews killed in that town during the Holocaust, put up by survivors who came to Israel as refugees after the founding of the state. Of noteworthy, see the town of Lodz over there? See this Kadosh Lodz?
Yeah.
The second largest ghetto in all of Europe and all of Poland. There's been hundreds of thousands of Jews in the Lodz ghetto. To this day, I've been told you can go to Lodz and see the cemetery.
I was in the cemetery.
Yeah, from before the Holocaust, the cemeteries are more than 150,000 graves. I think also 180,000 graves. I don't know the exact number of huge cemetery from before the Holocaust in the town of Lodz to understand how huge was the Jewish community in Poland before the Holocaust. Here you have the famous town of Krakow, the town of Ramah. Krakow here. Okay, see how we're redoing all these stones. See how this is newly painted? Okay.
And Aaron, how come these are encased?
So that's the way they were done by the survivors of the town. There's no real answer to that. Okay, here, this actually the town of Gur. This is very important. Hasidic communities came from there. Famous Ger Hasidim came from this town. Okay, it's the largest Hasidic group in Israel today.
And Bobov, these Bobov.
Right, that's Bobov, and here you have Visions. Okay, famous Visions Hasidim came from.
Do a lot of Hasidim come here?
Oh yes, certainly. Here you have. This is a very important site. This is a memorial stone to more than 1 million children killed in the Holocaust. The idea here is that the stone is crying. I see the tears coming down. The stone is crying. A memorial stone to more than 1 million children killed in the Holocaust.
So there's a picture of Reb Aryeh
I put
Levine.
that picture up there, right? You saw that over there?
I saw it, and
Yeah,
he came here when they installed this monument.
When I came here, I found an old scrapbook. of old newspaper articles, pictures from the early years of Mount Sinai. I found that photo in there and I put it up inside. I think I should be able to put it up right over here, but I don't have any way to put it up over here. Okay, that's basically that's concluded.
I'd like to see the Sugihara.
It's interesting. They only put it in Hebrew, the Sugihara.
I know. So this is the.
You know.
I'll
No, it's this one.
okay, but there's some more Matevas over here.
Yeah, just no, just the same.
So here's in the original.
Very, very faded. It's the only stone we have from Holland. And just a few weeks ago came a lady volunteer from Holland, and she wanted to volunteer for a few days, and she did for a few days. And what did she do? One of the things she did, she repainted this for the town of The Hague in Holland.
This is from Hungary. These are a lot from Hungary.
Well, everyone, the ones from Yugoslavia, Hungary, all over Europe we have, almost all over. We have Greece, we have all over. memorial to Sugi Hara. Maybe it's better. Can I say something off the record? Maybe it's better.
This is
It's a synagogue in Hungary. Even Hungarian Jews that came here, they were not familiar with this town, but it appears to be in Hungary.
do you know the name of the town?
It says in Hungarian right there. I came on my glasses here on I've seen this written right there in Hungarian. It's in Hebrew also. It says in Hebrew and Hungarian. Synagogue in that town. So, I'll tell you something else. Listen, not just that. You'll see a few scattered of the stones. You see pictures of the synagogue that was in those towns before the Holocaust. Synagogue in this town. The synagogue in this town. The synagogue in this town. The synagogue here. Throughout Europe, not just everybody knows about Germany, more than 1,000 synagogues destroyed in Kristallnacht, but throughout Europe, many hundreds of synagogues were burnt and destroyed throughout Europe during the Holocaust. Okay, and I want to point out what we saw inside. We saw the Torah scroll from Bankrope in Poland, and that Torah that Torah scroll was originally brought here and put here by survivors in the stone for the town of Bankrope, the bloodstained Torah scroll. Yeah. Okay, this is a piece of that Torah scroll. Going to Sugi Hara Memorial?
Yeah. From Holocaust to rebirth. And these are people that have donated to...
my guess is as good as yours. My very tiny guess is these people donated to the diaspora yeshiva many decades ago. These were all here when I came here years ago, but we have an Italian memorial to Italian Jewry here. This is also worth looking at here. It says here, Italian and Hebrew. The Jews were deported from Rome and Jews killed from Italy. Memorial to Italian Jewry. For many years I've been trying to investigate what in the world is this. So I've spoken to many people who came from Italy, and the only suggestion which I had from them, some of the people, they told me that in the hills outside of Rome, there are ancient sarcophaguses with like little tombs of children in those ancient tombs outside of Rome. So they told me perhaps what this was meant to be was a copy on that, and this idea was to be like a little tomb of a little child. That's what the people have suggested. I don't know if that's true. Since I want to emphasize that since Matef Hashoah, this is a very important point here, I'm summing up the whole place. Since it was originally conceived of as a cemetery, therefore many times through the explanation that I said I think or I know or my theory. Why do I have to say that? Because since this place was not built as a museum, it's built like a cemetery. When I came here many years ago, there was no written record of the items here. Every little thing I had to have to do with the help of Almighty. I'm doing detective work and research over the course of many years. There are items here to this day I know zero about, nothing about. Some other items I know little about. Some other items I know more about. This particular thing about Italy, I said I don't have no record at all when they put it up. I don't know who put it up, and do not know the details. So therefore, like everything else here, I've had to ask many people, investigate, research. So what I told you now was based on what I've spoken to Italian tourists who've come here. Okay.
And here we have for the memorial plaque for the righteous amongst the nations. And this is for Sugi Hara. So I remember here when they did this unveiling, the Japanese ambassador was here, and then a day later Nabuki Sugi Hara came. But I was here for the unveiling of this very important it's a monument to Sugi Hara, Shrina Sugi Hara, and here we have for Oscar Schindler.
I put this up now.
Because there were righteous amongst the nations, and I just would like to, Aaron, to take this opportunity to thank you for all the dedicated years of service that you've given to the Matef Hashoah, to the Chamber of the Holocaust, for introducing me to this unique and very special memorial to what happened in the Shoah. And you are an incredible curator. Not only curator, you do it with every fiber of your being. You live and you are so dedicated to the Matef Hashoah, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and all of us for your dedicated service to Am Yisrael, and you should just have mazel and bracha and many years of good service.
I do want to mention, I might have mentioned in passing, I'm going to point out my father's grandparents were killed in the Holocaust. I'm their only grandchild. My father, Olav Shalom, my late father, was a survivor of the concentration camps. And I really think I'm not here for myself, I'm not here because of myself. You know, as they say in Hebrew, shliach, a messenger of all the people in my family who suffered in the Holocaust, were killed in the Holocaust, and all the millions of people killed in the Holocaust. I'm being their servant, their messenger. It's really not me.
And Aaron, can I just ask, where did your family come from? And you know, okay, it's very private.
It's very personal. I'm not discussing unless I know exactly what I'm speaking.
We'll make another time.
Okay.
But Aaron, thank you so much, and we're just looking in at the different mitzvahs and